Hello, my name's Ruby Wallis and I'm a Senior Research Officer at Ataxia UK, and today I'll be giving you a research update on Friedreich's ataxia. Firstly, I'll be talking about Ataxia UK research activities and the process of research. Next, I'll be talking about developments and new treatments. And finally, I'll be talking about opportunities to take part in research in the UK. Looking at Ataxia UK research activities and the process of research. Ataxia UK funds research projects, and these are mostly small grants to get initial results. From our 2022 impact report, we saw that every £1 that Ataxia UK spends on research projects raises almost £5 in further funding specifically for more ataxia research. We're also involved in organising research conferences. For example, there's going to be a research conference in November called the International Congress for Ataxia Research, which Ataxia UK are organising alongside the US charities FARA and NAF. So to get a drug approved, it needs to go through clinical trials, and I'll just take you through the process of these. So firstly, there's the preclinical stage, and this lasts several years, and for this the drug is tested in cells and/or animals. And this is to look at the dosing and the safety before giving the drug to humans. Next, there's phase 1 trials, and this lasts several months, and this looks at the safety of the drug and how the body processes the drug and its effects on the body, and also gives information on appropriate dosing levels. A phase 2 trial lasts several months to 2 years, and this looks at the potential risks and benefits of the drug, whether the drug works in people who have the condition, and also continues to study safety. Then there's a phase 3 trial, which is 1 to 4 years, and this looks at potential risks and benefits compared to no treatment or an existing treatment. And typically people are either given the drug or a placebo. And this continues to study safety and whether the drug works in more people. And just to note, for rare diseases such as ataxia, the numbers of people in trials are usually much smaller, and different phases of the trial might be combined. Also, in between these phases of trial, there's extra time which is used to develop the trial protocols and then also to analyse the data. So what happens next after a successful clinical trial? Well, the treatment needs to get a licence from a regulatory agency before being made available. So in the UK, this is the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA. In Europe, this is the European Medicines Agency, the EMA, and in the US, this is the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. And if the drug agency approves the treatment, different bodies decide whether it can be provided by the NHS. For example, in England, this would be NICE, and in Scotland, this would be the Scottish Medicines Consortium. It's really important to have a lot of collaboration to advance research, and this is something that Ataxia UK are very much involved in. So Ataxia UK links researchers in the ataxia community. So we are involved in recruitment to studies and also patient engagement and research. And we also work with pharma and biotech companies to encourage their involvement in ataxia research, assist with programs, and also collect useful information from the ataxia community. And we're engaged at all different stages of research, from preclinical through to potential treatments being available in the NHS. I'm now going to talk about developments in new treatments. So in FA, there's a mistake in the frataxin gene, and this leads to a reduction in the amount of the frataxin protein. And this causes a lot of problems and disrupted processes within cells. For example, oxidative stress, an increase in iron in the mitochondria, which are the energy producers for cells, cell damage, and disrupted mitochondrial function and decreased energy production. And the potential treatments for FA can target different parts of this process. For example, genetic approaches to correct or replace the frataxin gene. You can increase the amount of the frataxin protein, or you can target the disrupted cellular processes. So I'll go through each one of this in turn and the updates and research in these areas. So looking at the different genetic approaches, Lexio Therapeutics has been developing a treatment for the cardiomyopathy associated with Friedreich's, and they have a gene therapy called OX2006, and that's designed to transfer the frataxin gene to heart cells. And they found that in animal models, this reversed the cardiac symptoms of Friedreich's. And in August, they started a phase 1/2 clinical trial in 10 people with FA in the US. There's also Design Therapeutics, which have a treatment called DT216, and this is designed to target the genetic mutation found in people with Friedreich's. And they've got positive results from their cell and animal studies. And they've started a phase 1 trial in the US, and they've dosed their first cohort of patients, and they're expecting the initial trial results by the end of 2022. But indeed, there's a number of different research groups and companies that are developing gene therapies for Friedreich's ataxia, and these are to replace or edit the frataxin gene. For example, there's all these different companies on the right here. For example, PTC Therapeutics, Takeda, Stride Bio, Solid Biosciences, and others. I'm now going to talk about developments in new treatments designed to increase the frataxin protein. So Larimar Therapeutics has been working on CTI-1601, and this delivers frataxin to the mitochondria, which are the energy producers for cells. And they've done phase 1 trials in the US, and these showed that there was an increase in frataxin. However, in May 2021, the FDA, which is the US regulatory agency, announced that there was a clinical hold due to the question around safety of a higher dose of this drug in an animal study designed to support a longer-term use of the drug. But in September this year, the full clinical hold has now been lifted due to extra information from Larimar, and a partial hold has been imposed. The phase 2 trial is now expected to start by the end of the year. Stealth Therapeutics has been working on elamepride, which targets the mitochondria and has shown positive effects in cell and animal studies. And they've been doing a phase 2 trial in the US to assess the safety, visual function, and cardiac function. There are also drug repurposing approaches. So this is when a drug is currently being used for a different condition and we want to test whether it can be used for Friedreich's. For example, calcitriol is being looked at, and this is an active form of vitamin D. And Ataxia UK previously funded a preclinical study in Spain. And in the animal cell models, they found that in the cell studies, there was improved mitochondrial function, improved cell survival, and increased frataxin levels. In September 2021, they started a trial in Spain for 1 year in 20 people, and this was designed to look at the safety and effect on quality of life, and we should be expecting the results of these hopefully soon. Another drug that's being looked at is etraverin, and this is an antiviral that is used to treat HIV, and it's been found that this increases frataxin in cells derived from patients. It's currently being tested in a phase 2 clinical trial in Italy to study its safety and efficacy in people with FA. And Ataxia UK has also funded a project to test drugs that have a similar structure or function to etraverin. So looking at developments in new treatments that target the disrupted processes within cells, I'm firstly going to talk about Reata Pharmaceuticals' drug omavaloxolone, or OMAV for short. So the rationale behind OMAV is that in Friedreich's ataxia, there's a dysfunction of the mitochondria and a decrease in energy produced. And what OMAV does is it restores mitochondrial function in Friedreich's ataxia cell models by activating a transcription factor called NRF2 that is reduced in Friedreich's. So there's been a multi-centre trial where London Ataxia Centre was the UK trial site, and this trial had parts 1, 2 and an open label extension in adults over 16. So the details of the trials, part 1 of the trial included 69 participants, and for every 3 people that took OMAV, 1 person took a placebo. And this was a 12-week study, and it was designed to work out the safety and determine the dose of OMAV to take for part 2. Part 2 of the study included 103 adults, and there was a 1-to-1 ratio between people who took OMAV and people who took a placebo. and this was to determine the safety and efficacy of the dose that was decided from part 1, and this was a 48-week study. And finally, there was the open label extension, and everyone who took part in parts 1 and 2 were eligible for this study, and all people took OMAV. So the results of this trial have been very positive. The results of part 1 found the best dose of the study, best dose of the treatment, found that it had a good safety, and there was also improvement in the mFARS. And this is a Friedreich's Ataxia rating scale and is used to measure the progression of the disease in Friedreich's. The results of part 2 were published, and these showed that patients taking OMAV for 48 weeks had a statistically significant improvement in their symptoms associated with Friedreich's than those on the placebo trials, and this was again measured by the mFARS scale. And the results of the extension were announced in May 2021, and these showed further evidence for the positive effect of OMAV. And these results are also going to be shared at the upcoming International Congress for Ataxia Research Conference in November. So now it's at the stage where Reata is discussing with the regulators to seek drug approval for OMAV. And I just want to take you through a timeline of what's been happening in this process. So in November 2020, the FDA, which are the US regulators, did an initial review of the data of part 2 of the study and part of the extension, and they asked for additional analyses and said that there might need to be a further trial. In 2021, in January, Ataxia UK supported the FARA, the US Friedreich's Charities campaign, to ask the FDA and Reata to consider approving the drug just based on the existing data and not doing another trial. And then in May 2021, we got the positive results of the extension phase. In March 2022, Reata completed its submission of a new drug application to the FDA. So the next step in this process is for the FDA to use this new drug application to decide whether to approve the treatment. In May 2022, we found out that the FDA granted OMAV a priority review designation, which means that they'll review Reata's application in a shorter time period. Reata also announced that they hope to complete a European regulatory submission at the end of the year. Unfortunately, this doesn't include the UK. In August 2022, Reata met with the FDA and they submitted further evidence to support OMAV. So currently we're waiting to hear a response regarding the FDA's decision on approving OMAV in the US, and we're hoping to receive this by the 28th of February next year. So for OMAV to be approved in the UK, it's a little bit different. So Reata need to submit an application to the UK regulators, which are the MHRA, and Ataxia UK have been working with and meeting with Reata to encourage and support them in seeking UK regulatory approval. And we've been adding all OMAV updates to our website, and you can keep updated with OMAV news and also sign up for the OMAV specific newsletter at ataxia.org.uk/OMAV updates. PTC Therapeutics are working on a drug called vatiquinone, and they've been doing a trial on this. This is an antioxidant and has shown positive results in small phase 2 trials. So currently they're doing a phase 3 trial, and this is ongoing, and the trial is called MOVE-FA. And in this drug, people are either taking the drug or a placebo, and it involves 146 adults and children, and it's an 18-month study. And what they're looking at in this, their primary measure, is the mFARS, which is this measurement of disease progression in Friedreich's. And they started the study in December 2020, and they're anticipating the results in the second quarter of next year. So we are looking forward to those. Minarex Therapeutics are working on a drug called MIN-102. And MIN-102 is a PPAR gamma activator. And what PPAR gamma is a protein found in cells. And in FA, the PPAR gamma can't function properly. And a phase 1 clinical trial has showed that MIN-102 is well tolerated and able to reach the brain. So they did a phase 2 trial in Europe of 39 people, and this showed promising results for safety in upper limb ataxia, but the changes in the spinal cord were inconclusive. So what they've been doing now is been using this data to design a phase 3 trial, and this is in the discussion with the with the European and the US regulators. And finally, some further trials. There's a trial ongoing on resveratrol in Australia, and what resveratrol is it's a naturally occurring compound found in the skin of red grapes, and it potentially improves mitochondrial function. There's also a study looking at an NAD plus precursor by Metro International Biotech, and this is primarily a safety trial that's ongoing in the US in 10 adults. And there's a study in France of 20 people for a drug called artesunate as well. And looking at developments in new treatments, there's also stuff looking at symptomatic relief rather than these underlying processes. So it's been found that applying a low electrical current to the scalp might alleviate some of the symptoms of ataxia. So one of these techniques is called cerebellar transcranial direct current stimulation, or TDCS for short. And Ataxia UK previously funded a TDCS trial in Italy, and this looked at a range of ataxias, including Friedreich's. And last year we found out the results, and they showed improvements in 2 different clinical rating scales. One's called SARA, which is the scale for assessment and rating in ataxia, and the other one called ICARS, which is the International Cooperative Ataxia Rating Scale, and they also found improvements in cognition and quality of life scores. However, results in other studies just looking at spinocerebellar ataxias have shown mixed results. Therefore, we wanted to look at a different technique called transcranial alternating current stimulation, or TACS, and Ataxia UK are funding a TACS trial by the same group in Italy. And this could potentially be even more effective than the TDCS at alleviating symptoms of ataxia. And finally, I want to move on to looking at opportunities to take part in research in the UK. So there's the FA Global Patient Registry. So many charities, including Ataxia UK, have patient registries, and these are used to recruit for clinical trials and research studies. But the groups have come together to build an international registry now called the FA Global Patient Registry. And this is a global effort to pull information into one place and make it a more powerful resource for research, and helps us understand the condition and patient experiences. So if you're interested in registering for this, then you can look at fapatientregistry.org. And so far we've got over 1,000 people with FA who've registered, and over 51 countries represented in the patient registry. Looking at research tools, there's the FA app, and this is a really nice app that's set up by the charity End FA, and it's used to help people with FA and to facilitate research. So their aims are to connect people with FA to researchers running clinical and virtual research trials, and it also empowers people with FA with useful tools for managing your life and treatment, and it educates people about symptoms, diagnosis, treatments, and it's also really good for sharing the latest FA news. So to look at this, you can go to the faapp.org, or you can download it from the Apple Store or Google Play. There's a European FA consortium study, and this is a multi-site European natural history study. And what natural history studies do is they look at a progression of a disease over time. And there's a site in London as well as other European sites, and they're still recruiting, and this data is being used to design trials, so it's really important. So the funding from this comes from the EU, patient groups via Eurotaxia, and also pharmaceutical partners. And the London Ataxia Centre is recruiting for this. So if you've been diagnosed with FA and are interested in taking part, please contact Professor Paola Giunti at p.giunti@ucl.ac.uk. There's also a speech therapy study ongoing for people with Friedreich's, and what this is looking at is whether intensive practice of articulation exercises improves speech in people with progressive ataxia. So the study will provide intensive one-to-one input with a speech and language therapist working on articulation in an online format. So your involvement in this would last around 4 months in total, including assessments and treatment, and 4 weeks of these will involve therapy input consisting of 4 one-hour sessions per week. And this study is jointly funded by Ataxia UK and LSVT Global, and it's carried out by researchers at Strathclyde University. And if you're interested in taking part in this and would like more information, please email Professor Anya Lowett at a.lowett@strath.ac.uk. And we also have opportunities for healthcare research, and you can find these on our website. So one of these is the Google's AI for Social Good program by Project Euphonia. So this is collecting speech samples from people with speech difficulties in order to improve voice recognition technology. So for example, this could be used to improve Google Assistant. There's also a survey looking at moving from child to adult healthcare services. And the aim of this particular study is to produce a report for clinicians and other professionals about how to improve the care they deliver and guidance for young people and families on what care you should expect to receive. In terms of upcoming trials and opportunities, there's the European FA nicotinamide trial, which has unfortunately been delayed, but when recruitment starts in London, they expect to recruit up to 90 people, and the aim for this is to start in 2023. And in order to be kept up to date with all the new research opportunities, we suggest that you join Ataxia UK. And all of our studies and all this information can also be found on our website at ataxia.org.uk. So you can go to the Ataxia Research tab, and then under that is taking part in research. And then there's sections that would be relevant, including healthcare research, and then there's a section specifically for people with Friedreich's ataxia. So thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, please contact me at rwallis@ataxia.org.uk or the team at research@ataxia.org.uk. Thank you.